Hey Zion, so what you're going to do with problems like this is you're going to take the number on the outside and you're going to multiply it by each one inside. So I'm going to kind of write that out at the bottom so we can see how to process through it. So this matrix multiplication gives us all of these 6 problems to do. You talked about doing this first one. You said you multiplied, you were able to recognize that there's a 1 here, cross cancel. So you have 3 over 1 times basically 1 over 1. So what our first answer is going to be, and we're going to put it right up here in the first slot, is going to be a -3. And we got that from here. This next one, to deal with the 5, we're going to change the 5 into a fraction, so it's 5 over 1. When I multiply numerator times numerator and then denominator times denominator. There's no cross canceling or I forget what you call it, cross simplifying or something. You have a different name for it. Forgive me for forgetting. But there's no cross simplifying. We can't do that. So we've got to multiply 3 times 5 and we're going to get 15. And I'm going to do 8 times 1, and that's going to be 8. So that's that next number. And this one, fortunately, we got an easy one here. 3/8 times 0 is just 0 because anything times 0 is 0. So we got the first row. Now we got to get the second row. And that's going to require us doing this problem. And it looks ugly. When we multiply a fraction times a mixed number, we need to change that mixed number into an improper fraction. You're really good at doing this, so you can pause me now and see if you can figure it out. But if not, I'm going to do it for you. We're going to take 3 and 3/7 and we're going to change it into an improper fraction. And that'll give us 24 over 7. And because we got 24 over 7 times 3 over 8, we look to see if we can cross simplify, cross cancel, and we can. 8 goes into 24 3 times, and 8 goes into itself 1 time. So this becomes 3 times 3, which is 9 over 7. So this becomes 9/7. Over here, this next one, we have 3 times a -4 and then an 8 times a 9. But if I look at it, I think I can cross cancel. So let me use a different color here. Hold on. So when I look at this, I see that 4 can go into itself 1 time and 4 can go into 8 2 times. 3 can go into itself 1 time and 3 can go into 9 3 times. So when I multiply 1 times a -1, that negative is still there. 1 times a -1, I get -1 over 2 times 3, 6. Now let me change that back to black so it looks like the other ones. And then so that just leaves us with one final one to do. So that I get a -1 over 6 here. And then finally, this guy looks kind of crazy. So I need to think about how to change this decimal into a fraction because we've been dealing with fractions all along. This is something we talked about over the summer. You can put any number over 1, and to change this decimal into a fraction, I'm going to move this decimal point over 1 space, and if I do that there, I have to do that down here. That gives me 2/10, and 2/10 can be reduced to 1/5. So 0.2 is equal to 1/5. All right, I don't like the way I've written that, so I'm going to take all this off, and I'm going to take also away my -0.2, and I'm just going to get a -1/5. So that's the first thing that we want to do here. We want to change that into a fraction. And now that it's a fraction, we're going to continue with all the rest of them. We're just going to multiply straight across. 3 times a -1 is a -3, and 8 times 5 is 40. So that's our answer here. One note, your teacher may want you to change this improper fraction and this improper fraction into a mixed number, and I know you know how to do that. When you change that, if you choose to change that, if you feel like he wants to see that, 8 will go into 15 1 time with a remainder of 7, so that becomes 1 and 7/8, and 7 goes into 9 1 time with a remainder of 2, so that becomes 1 and 2/7. Let's look at number 10. Number 10 is simply subtracting, and again, we end up with a bunch of problems, but the cool thing is now instead of having 6 problems like we had last time, we're going to end up with 4. So we're going to subtract each term from itself. We're going to subtract each term from the other one in its place. So we're going to subtract like that. So here are the 4 problems that we have. This first one will be 5 minus the -1/6. So when we have that minus minus, we turn it into a plus. It becomes 5 plus 1/6, which we can write as 5 and 1/6. Not too bad. This next one is -2/3 minus a minus 5. Again, that's minus minus gives me a plus. So that's negative 2/3 plus 5. If we think about that, we can rewrite this as a fraction, like so. I'm going to erase it actually so we can kind of get a little bit more space. So as I see, this is 5/1, really minus 2/3. I'm going to write it just like that. We know that when we subtract fractions, we need to have common denominators. So I have to go ahead and change that 1 to a 3. And if I multiply the denominator by 3 to get it to become a 3, I've got to multiply the numerator by 3. So my 5 becomes a 15. So now this is 15/3 minus 2/3. When I subtract 2 from 15, I end up with 13/3, and I'll change that to black momentarily. All right, so we got that, and we only have 2 more problems to do. We're down here at negative 80 minus 13, and I think you're pretty good at doing those. You were really good with those. You can probably do those pretty much in your head. You got a negative and a negative. It's still going to be negative. You're going to end up with a negative 93. And then finally, this guy over here is going to take a little bit of work, but we can handle it. We need a common denominator. And that common denominator in this case would be 20. So I'm going to change this guy to 20. Let's do that. So if you notice, my 5 became a 20. What do I multiply 5 by in order to get 20? 4. So I have to do the same thing to the numerator. I multiplied my 2 by 4, and I got 8. So now instead of having negative 17 over 20 minus 2/5, I've got negative 17 over 20 minus 8/20. And I'm going to have a similar situation as I did in this problem, where I have 2 negatives and I'm just going to add them up, and I'm going to keep the same negative value. So we get negative 25/20, and that can be reduced because 5 goes into both of them. So I'm going to leave it as a negative 5/4. So those are our 4 terms that we have for that one. And again, we can change our improper fraction into mixed numbers pretty easily.